Let's go, and stay on alert.
Hello and welcome to another episode of my Let's Play World of Tanks. Today I'm covering the differences between the T34 American heavy tank and the Lowe German tank, also known as the Lion. Both are premium tanks that can be purchased either in the gift store or in the in-game store using gold. And to get those, it runs about 12,000 gold. So it is one of the most expensive tanks in the market, and it is the most expensive tanks on the market, I should say. And they are also the highest credit earning potential tanks in the market. So with that said, let's go over the differences. First off, the nice lovely T34 American tank, it is more of a close-up, hard-hitting beast. It does higher damage and higher penetration than the Lion, with its averaging about an 86 to 310 penetration, millimeters of armor that is, and dealing 300 to 500 damage. So it is definitely a heavy-hitting cannon with a very large round. With an aim time of 3.4 seconds and an accuracy at 100 meters of 0.35, this beast needs to be taken very carefully because firing at a rate of 4 rounds a minute, it does not have the standoff ability as other tanks where it can sit there and go toe-to-toe, as you will get flanked and outrun because of the fact that you can only fire every 17 seconds, give or take, depending on your crew stats. So, with that said, this beast has 1,500 hit points and has a very weak hull armor of 102 in the front, with the turret being 280. So, this thing, you really need to be careful with your placement in terrain and where exactly you are, because your hull can be penetrated by anything in the game you're going to be put up against, but the turret itself, if you place it correctly, will never be damaged. So, this thing is kind of a mid-range to short-range beast. If you can somehow get in there and face-hug an enemy with it, you'll do great. Or if you stay like I am right now, and you're sitting behind a hill so only your turret is exposed, they're really not going to have much of a target to hit. So, this thing is doing some good damage, doing some very great penetration. If you know where you're going to aim, you're going to go through every tank you're going to get placed up against, and it is a great thing to do. So if you're running it in tandem like I'm doing here, or if you're doing it just with teammates in general, you will fare far better than you will just going off on your own, as you will get flanked and they will use the weakness of your hull to take you down. So, with this tank, and with the Lion as well, I ended up doing 20 games just in a row back to back so I can get a list of amounts earned per game. And I want to compare them to see which one seemed to do better. Now, I will get into those details in the final part of this video, but suffice to say, it will allude to some things, and it's more about the tank than it is the cash. So, how do you play this tank? It's really up to you, but I found it most effective if you were to sit here. Make sure you are very cautious with when you're going to move, because if you expose yourself, you're going to be very prone to getting tracked, very prone to getting flanked, and everyone's going to have line of sight to your weak spots. So, there's not really a whole lot of safe times to move other than when you're sure everything around you is dead. And if you're going to move, make sure you do it with conviction. Don't stand around and go in the open and just stop to shoot. You need to move to the next piece of terrain that's going to give you the concealment and cover that you need. Now, cresting this hill like I'm about to is going to expose the soft underbelly of this T34, and there's very little I can do. But it is a risk I have to take, as the traverse is good on it, but it is not the greatest. I cannot go completely hull down up against the hill like this, so I do have to expose myself and just hope for the best. Now, it does pay off in the fact that I do have a very large turret that actually can somehow attract rounds, as it just so happens to be a larger surface area than the hull. So if people are not delicately aiming, the rounds have a very good chance of just going right into the gun mantlet and doing no damage. So, the traverse speed on this thing is an 18 degrees second. So it's kind of a slow turn, so most tanks are going to be able to outrun your turret turn radius. So what you're going to want to do is move your hull along with your turret, so you just face the direction or you point your mouse the way you want to go, and you just keep rotating around using the A and D key on your keyboard, so that way you kind of catch up a bit and you speed up the process. Now, if you have Smooth Ride on, if you have any of the other great perks like Snapshot, that'll greatly help reduce the spread of that reticle deviation while you're turning and while you're trying to aim at your next target. and that of course will make it a little easier for when people are trying to zoom around you, and you got to make that quick shot, and you don't have to worry about it zooming in just enough so you hit it. You'll know that generally you'll be alright. Now, again, this thing, you need to really be careful of its placement. Here I would not have the turret, or the gun traverse to be able to take care of the targets behind this hill without exposing myself. So, one of the best options I can do is just take a quick shot and then get behind the dead carcass of another tank, because at least that way I'm protected for the most part. And if I expose anything, it's just going to be the simple track wheels, and so I'm going to get trapped. Not a big deal. Not much damage will happen. And I can happily take that hit. So, with that, the top speed of this tank is 35 kph, so it's actually a pretty fast tank, considering how heavy it is. While there are no upgrades for this tank, I did throw in a few different modules, including the ammo rammer, the spall liner, and the gun lane drive. Now your choices might be different, but I found that those generally work pretty well for my playstyle in this tank. So let's go ahead and move on to the Lion here, and see how it stacks up. The Lion plays slightly differently than the T34. It's a super heavy tank, and it's also one of the premiums, but the difference is in how it works, how it operates, and how you use it. Well, that's pretty much everything now, isn't it? So let me get a little bit more detailed with it then. The caliber gun is a 10.5 centimeter, and it does an average penetration of 176 to 293 millimeters of penetration, so slightly less than that of the T34. The damage on it, though, is from 240 to 400, so again, slightly less, almost 100 less at its max than that of the T34. So how does it make up for this? Well, the Lion has 1,650 hit points, so it does have 150 more hit points. Additionally, its speed is identical with 35 kph. Now, the traverse speed is only mildly faster at 24 degrees a second as opposed to 22. The reload, though, is the big difference. The turret, or the tank rather, fires 5 rounds a minute as opposed to the 4 from the T34. That is a huge difference in terms of a long-range, long-engaged firefight. Putting out one shell difference means a whole lot. Now, the armor on the Lion is slightly, well, let me explain. It's 120 on the front of the hull and 120 on the turret. While that doesn't seem like much, as the T34 only has 102 on the front, the 120 millimeters on the Lion actually has a really nice slope to the front of it. So a lot of shells are actually going to glance right off of it if not aimed carefully, and will just get deflected. And same thing with the turret. It is a nice, really nice conical round shape with a very thick gun mantle. So the chance of that being penetrated are also a little bit more difficult, as it has a nice ability to bounce shells. So the really major weak spots are of course your sides as always, but also the lower plate, where it is very thin and easy to hit the engine and thus causing either a fire or dead engine, stopping you where you stand. Now, as for the gun itself, the gun has a nice, lovely 2.9 aiming time, so you're going to be able to lock onto the target and aim right at it almost right away, where it takes a full 0.6 seconds more with the T34 to really hone in on that target, and sometimes that means a lot when you're firing a full round a minute faster. In addition, your accuracy is 0.33 as opposed to 0.35, so while that doesn't seem like a lot, the Lion actually becomes more of a sniper role than it does become a front line tank role. Now, I kind of use it as a frontline tank for some odd reason, a lot of times, but additionally, I find that when I'm using it more as a support sniper role, it does a really decent job, as I can get my shells on targets very accurately, very quickly, from almost any distance, and have very little problem penetrating. Of course, when you're shooting against this heavy tank, there's not a whole lot you can do. You kind of just point and shoot and hope for the best. Now, as for the tank in general, it does have a 23 degrees per second turn radius for the turret. That is only mildly better than that of the T34, and so it is just a little bit better at catching targets that are coming up next to it. Now again, when you modify that using either clutch braking to help you turn your turret or your hull faster, when you're using snapshot or when you're using smooth ride, that all goes into it as well, so you do have a pretty decent chance of catching up to anything that's zooming around you. Now, as for the tank itself, your weak points, like I said, are the engine down below. That's probably your major soft spot that you need to look out for, as opposed to the T34 having the whole superstructure being a soft spot. The ammo rack on this thing is not easy to hit, so you should never have to really worry too much about that. But the engine can light on fire really easily if you're not careful, as well as the fact that the engine is such an easy target that it is probably one of the most things that you need to be cautious of is how much you are exposing your lower plate, as that can mean the world of difference between you getting stuck where you are, lit on fire, dead, or able to still be in the fight. And so, the Lion is kind of a longer range tank, where the T34 definitely is a get up there, get in their face sort of tank. And so, with that said, some of the things that I put on it, as far as the Lion, well, let's take a look at what I'm doing. Personally, on the Lion, I have the ammo rammer and the gun lane drive, so that way I have a much quicker rate of fire, well, 10% quicker fire, and slightly better aiming time. And then I also have camo nets, simply because at such a range that I like to keep this thing at, I like to be able to stay only a little bit more hidden if possible, and also it just worked out that way with the credits I earned and the modules I needed at the time. So, your mileage may vary, and you might want to do different things, depending on how your playstyle is. Binoculars are always great, as it is a sniper tank, and typically you're going to be wanting to stay slightly behind the line of fire, as opposed to what I'm doing here and being up close. Now, not to say that you can't, because the Lion is a very good frontline tank if it needs to be, but I just prefer it to be used more of a support and long range role, as I cannot compete with some of the other tanks when it comes to facing just close range action in general. Now, I've touched upon both of these tanks in their own respects and their own rights, and as you can see by my playstyles, I do things a little bit differently than the standard player. I mean, I typically play as a very aggressive player, and so I don't use the tanks for the roles that mostly they're intended for, unless it just so happens to work out the way I want it to and I can get away with it. Now, apparently the Lion definitely has some pretty good armor, definitely has some pretty good hit points, and can take a lot of hits. Because I'm sitting here taking hits left and right from the ridge, and I'm just being able to bounce off a lot of stuff. Now imagine if you're at far range and you're able to do that, and yet you're still able to penetrate and put your rounds on target, well then you're certainly becoming one heck of a sniper and a monster in and of your own right. Now, not to say that you're going to penetrate every time, as obviously there are certain tanks that at range you're going to do the same thing they're going to do to you and just bounce off. But if you have the slightly better aim, the ability to aim right at their weak spots, and then just a little bit of luck with your dice roll here, you're able to go through a lot of weak spots like this T34 at long range and have no problems. While I know that his turret and hull are not exactly the strongest, that's also the fact that I know that I probably could just glance right off him if he only had the right angle. Now, the problem is I'm going to have to camp here for a little bit because I know that my health is really low, and so I'll fade right back into the end of the game here where things are almost wrapped up because I don't want to risk getting killed. And of course, this tank being so great, I just kind of wanted to show how good it is. Now, as this last piece of artillery ends up getting destroyed, we'll get to see just how awesome this tank is, or what it is capable of. So eventually here it'll get killed like that, and then we'll pull up the little stats here. Amazing gold. I was able to get a lot of different achievements there, and I sustained quite a few hits, as you can see here.
Ready for battle. We blitz.
So now that I've discussed both tanks and gone over their roles, their equipment, the way they work, how they operate, and how I typically like to use them, let's go on to a straight up comparison. I played 20 games in both tanks, which some say is not enough to get a nice sample size, but it's at least enough to get a nice sort of guess as to how that's going to pan out. Now, I kind of hit a slump in both tanks at certain points, with the Lion having a little bit more harsher of a slump. With I had a low game of 18,000 credits, and a high game during the 20, that is, of 88,456 credits. With the T34, on the other hand, having a low game of 17,628 credits, and a high game immediately after, of all things, with 109,462 credits. So, my ranges on both tanks were pretty far across. And so it was a lot of just good luck on some games, bad luck on others, frustration with some, great experiences on others, and it's just not a, it's really is just a crapshoot as to how you're going to perform. I mean, you can take skill so far, but there is a nice little dice roll in the game to randomize it a bit. And of course, it just so happens that whatever suits your playstyle, your team makeup, there's a whole lot of factors that go into it. Now, your standard credit income, I've covered that in previous videos, way back, probably in the teens or 20s of my series. And that would be the fact that you earn credits based on your damage, your spotting, if you get a kill, if you just do damage and someone else gets a kill, if you're the spotter and someone else kills it, so on and so forth. There's a whole lot of different factors that go into it. So primarily, let's just say it's based on the damage output you do, and of course, the kills give you a nice little bonus, or of course, if other people get the kill, it gives you a bonus as well. So, with all that factoring into it, the premium tanks themselves earn you 1.5 times the normal credits you would earn for an exact same game in any other tank. So if you do 1,000 damage in one game with a Panzer IV, or you do 1,000 damage in a game with a Lion, you're going to be earning 1.5 times more credits in the Lion than you are in the PZ4. And I'm not even taking into account the whole difference in tiers and everything else. It's just simply going straight to that number. And with that said, in addition to that, you're going to earn an additional 1.5 times credits earned when you're using a premium account. So you're going to be earning 1.5 times the credits for using a premium tank, and another 1.5 times for using a premium account. And so you're going to be earning quite a bit more using a Lion or a T34 in a premium account than you are any other tank in just the standard account. And that really is the way to make money. Because as you can see here, I was making anywhere from 20,000 credits to 100,000 credits a game. And it just continues on past the 20 that I recorded. I've played these tanks several times, played them for, I don't have the record on me right now as to how many, but enough times where I know that I'm making so much money to help support the different tanks that I buy, because I have several different tanks unlocked and not enough credits to be able to purchase them. And just playing on your own, it'd be very difficult to be able to do such a feat, to be able to support, you know, 4 or 5 or 6 different tanks being unlocked all at the same time. And so it is, while this game is free to play, paying that extra little bit here and there for either such a great premium tank or paying for the premium account just sets you off so much better and makes you be able to get to the higher level stuff faster. But if you can't, it's okay. You grind it out, and it is still possible to do such things. Your time dedication is a lot more, whereas my time dedication is not exactly the best at the moment due to other factors. Now, I was lucky enough to get the T34 based off when the T34 was originally a very high tier tank for the Americans and was then subsequently moved into a premium as opposed to being revised and kept in a standard high level tier. Now, I was lucky enough with the Lion that it was given to me from my clan, which was a great gift. So, overall, after doing the averages out of the 20 games, they both averaged to relatively close. The T34 averaged making 59,761.9 credits per game, while as the Lion averaged making 53,422.85 credits per game. So it is real close as to their average, being only about 5,000 or 6,000 credits apart. Now, that pretty much just reflects on the luck of your team, the luck of how you play, just your style, and a whole lot of other little factors, not necessarily the tank itself. So the end result is that it's about the player, not the tank. Both the T34 and the Lion are very great tanks. I recommend either one, and it's really up to you as to which one you prefer and which suits your playstyle. So there is no difference, and that is the end result to take away from this, is that no matter what choice you make, you just got to make the choice that will suit you better. There's no one that's better than the other. It's how you play it and how you want to use it. I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode. I'm glad I could cover this topic. I'll put out another video shortly featuring all these other tanks I'm now working on. And my rating and subscription is greatly appreciated. Facebook and Twitter in the description, along with the mods that I use. And thank you guys once again. Catch you guys in the next episode.